Female cat or male cat? It's one of the questions I get asked most by people who are about to adopt. And for years, I ask myself the same thing more than once. At first glance, it seems simple. If it's male, it's a tomcat. If it's female, it's a female cat. End of story. But the reality, after living with both, is far more interesting than that. It's not just about biology, it's about two different ways of being in the world, of reacting, of relating to you, and to the rest of the household. I've had the good fortune to share years of my life with both female and male cats, and I can tell you honestly that, even though every cat has its own unique, unrepeatable personality, there are patterns that do show up more often in one sex than the other. It's a bit like comparing siblings. They share the same genetics, the same base instincts, and yet their temperament can be radically different. People constantly ask me which is better, a female cat, usually more independent, more alert, more agile, or a male, almost always bigger, calmer, more clingy. And the truth is, there's no single answer. Each option has its upside and its complicated side, and it all depends on what you're really looking for in a feline companion. That's why I made this video, to calmly go through, with real examples, all the differences that exist between a female cat and a male cat. We're going to talk about their physical build, their character, how they bond with you, their territorial instinct, how they get along with other cats, how they play, their health, and at the end, we're going to bust several myths that people repeat without really thinking about them. By the end, you'll have a much clearer idea of what to expect from each one. Before we start, if you enjoy this kind of animal trivia and want to keep exploring the world of cats with me, hit subscribe. It costs nothing, and it helps me enormously to keep making content like this. With that said, let's get to the first point. 1. Physical differences. The body tells a story. The first time I put a female cat and a male cat side by side, the difference jumped out at me immediately. And I'm not talking about details only an experienced breeder would catch. I'm talking about something obvious, visible almost at first glance. Male cats, in general, are bigger. They have a sturdier build, wider paws, more bulk overall. The head tends to be rounder, with well-defined jowls, especially in adult unneutered males. Female cats, on the other hand, tend to be more delicate, more streamlined, with a finer muzzle and, let's say, finer features overall. It's happened to me several times. I'll see a cat I don't know, and just from its silhouette and proportions, I can already guess whether it's male or female before even getting close. A female cat often reminds me of an agile dancer. Light movements, a slender body, long, fine legs. A male cat, on the other hand, looks more like a bodyguard or a small wrestler, heavier, with a broader chest and a stronger neck. When I approach a cat like that, I feel like I'm facing an absolute heavyweight. And it's not just about final size. Males tend to grow faster and reach a higher weight, especially if they haven't been neutered. Females tend to be more compact, though careful, there's no fixed rule. I've known huge female cats, easily able to dominate males much bigger than themselves. It's a bit like with people. Genetics and lifestyle end up making the difference. There are differences in the face, too. Male cats, especially older ones, develop what are known as jowls, those prominent cheek pads that appear due to hormonal effects. This makes their face look squarer, wider. Female cats, by contrast, keep softer features, a smaller nose, finer ears, a subtler gaze. Sometimes, looking at my own cat, I get the feeling that its physique fits its personality perfectly. A female cat looks like a quick, agile huntress, ready to leap onto the closet at any moment. A male cat looks more like a calm giant, more inclined to sprawl on the couch than to climb the curtains. Of course, none of this should be taken as a fixed rule. There are female cats bigger than many males, and males with an almost delicate build. But in most cases, these differences are pretty noticeable and jump out immediately. And that's exactly what's fascinating. A cat's mere physical appearance can already hint at its nature. And if we look more closely, we'll see that these bodily differences go hand in hand with very clear differences in behavior. 2. Character differences. Two ways of seeing the world. When someone asks me what the biggest difference between a female cat and a male cat is, I think of character right away. Physical build is one thing, but it's personality that really defines what day-to-day life with them is like. And here the differences tend to be quite marked, although, I'll say it again, every cat keeps its own individuality. From my own experience, male cats tend to be calmer, more relaxed. I get the feeling they look at the world with a kind of feline detachment all their own. Nothing chases them, nothing seems to stress them out much. They're capable of spending hours sprawled on the couch, stretching and sleeping in the most absurd positions you can imagine. And even though they have their bursts of activity now and then, they usually go right back to lazy bear mode. In a lot of households, the male cat ends up being that big, soft cat who lets himself be petted without any resistance at all. Female cats are a completely different story. They tend to be more energetic, faster, and often much more curious. I love watching a female cat move around the house with that particular grace, always alert, always ready to jump wherever she feels like in that instant. They give off a stronger sense of independence. It's usually the female cat who decides, on her own terms, when she wants to be petted and when she'd rather be left alone. They're the ones who set the rules, and those of us who live with them end up adjusting to those rules. None of this means, not in the slightest, that female cats don't show affection. Quite the opposite. They can be incredibly affectionate, but always on their own terms. When a female cat comes to you on her own looking for cuddles, you can tell it was a choice, not a habit or a routine. And that's a big part of their charm, that touch of mystery and distance they always maintain. Of course, there are no absolute rules here either. I know male cats that behave like little hurricanes, into everything, in constant motion, looking for mischief all day long. And I know female cats that are the picture of calm, able to lie in the same spot for half the day without moving an inch. But if I had to name a general tendency, I'd say male cats tend to be lazier and more affectionate, while female cats tend to be livelier and more independent. To me, this comparison is a bit like contrasting two lifestyles. The male cat is that friend who always has time to lie on the couch with you for an entire afternoon. The female cat is that acquaintance who shows up, gives you a look full of personality, and disappears around the corner, leaving you wondering what she's up to now. And it's exactly these differences in character that make choosing between a female and a male cat not such a simple decision. At its core, it's choosing a lifestyle and a kind of energy that's about to enter your home. 3. Attachment to people. One of the biggest differences I've noticed between female and male cats has to do with how they express affection toward humans. It's curious. They're the same species, and yet their way of relating to us can be completely different. Male cats, at least in my own experience, tend to be much more open and direct when it comes to showing affection. Often it feels like they flat out need the contact. They come over, lie down next to you, and have no problem climbing onto your lap or sprawling right across the keyboard while you're trying to work. They're those Velcro cats who are always looking for physical closeness. They can sit next to you for hours, purring, as if the whole world had shrunk down to just that moment with you. Female cats, on the other hand, tend to be more reserved. And careful, that doesn't mean at all that they love their caretaker any less. They just show it differently. It's usually the female cat herself who decides when she comes over and when she lets herself be petted. Sometimes she'll spend half the day acting like you don't exist, and then, out of nowhere, she jumps on the bed and curls up against you with all her might, as if she wanted to make up all at once for those hours of indifference. And that's exactly what makes a female cat's affection feel even more special to me. I always know it was a conscious choice on her part. More than once, I've had a female cat come over not looking for cuddles at all, just to sit nearby and watch. She didn't need the physical contact itself, just being present was enough. It's a completely different approach from male cats, who almost always actively seek out direct physical contact. Female cats tend to express affection in subtler ways. A light brush against your leg, a short meow, or simply lying near you, though not necessarily on top of you. And here I come back to something I always repeat. A cat's attachment isn't measured by how much cuddling it hands out. It's more about how it chooses, on its own, to be close to us. Male cats tend to want that closeness more often and more consistently. Female cats give it less often, but every one of those gestures is worth its weight in gold. I've also noticed that around kids or visitors, male cats tend to open up faster. They tend to be more sociable and aren't as spooked by new faces. Female cats, on the other hand, tend to be more cautious, prefer to keep their distance, and only approach a new person once they themselves decide it's worth it. The nicest part of all this to me is that regardless of sex, a cat can genuinely become deeply attached to a person. It's just that each one does it in its own way. A male cat will tell you straight up, rubbing against your face. A female cat will tell you quietly, sitting a few feet away, but looking you in the eyes in a way that makes it clear you matter to her. 4. Territory. Who's in charge here? Ever since I've had cats, I've learned something. Each of them has its own world, which it treats like a personal kingdom. And this is exactly where some of the biggest differences between female and male cats show up. Male cats, especially those that aren't neutered, feel an enormous need to mark their territory. It's part of their nature. In the wild, males compete for space, for access to food, and for females. Even at home, in a completely safe environment, that instinct is still there, lying dormant. I once knew a male cat who would mark absolutely every corner, even when there was no real need to. For him, it was a clear message. This is mine, and nobody's taking it from me. And that's precisely why male cats tend to get into more conflicts with other cats. They're simply defending their turf. Female cats approach the subject differently. They can also be very territorial, but in a different way. They don't need to mark everything. Instead, they tend to be the ones who manage the space. I once had a female cat who never marked the house with urine, but any male cat that dared enter her territory got the message immediately. I'm in charge here. She was a kind of silent ruler. She didn't need to leave scent everywhere. One flick of the tail or a single look was enough for everyone to understand who the queen of the house was. When I watch male cats, I get the sense that their way of dominating is more physical, more brute force. Bigger bodies, stronger paws, all of it working as a tool to prove, I'm in charge here. In female cats, dominance is much more psychological. They don't always fight with force. They tend to rely more on cunning and control of the situation. Sometimes, all it takes is for a female cat to lie down in a male cat's favorite spot without even flinching, and instead of contesting the space, he just gives up and looks for somewhere else. I've also noticed that female cats tend to be more consistent about keeping order in the house. A male cat can give up ground easily. A female cat, on the other hand, rarely does. And that's an important difference in day-to-day life, because if you have several cats at home, it's often the female who sets the rules, while the male ends up adapting to them. Of course, all of this changes quite a bit with neutering or spaying. In cats that have had the procedure, these behaviors are much less pronounced, though deep down the instinct is still there, just in a more subtle way. You can see it, for example, in how they move around the house. The male cat tends to make a kind of round, checking every corner as if patrolling his territory. The female cat, on the other hand, focuses on a few key spots and defends them like a fortress. To me, watching these differences is fascinating. It's a bit like comparing two leadership styles. The male cat is the warrior who defends his borders through strength. The female cat is the queen who rules through her gaze and an unshakable attitude. And thanks to that, each one brings a completely different energy into the home. 5. Living with other cats. I always say the same thing. A cat's true character is fully revealed the moment a second cat shows up in the house. And this is where the differences between female and male cats become especially clear. Male cats, especially when they grow up together or are neutered early enough, tend to build genuinely good relationships with each other. I've seen male cats acting like true, lifelong buddies, sleeping side by side, grooming each other, even play fighting together. Sure, there are the occasional disagreements, but they usually get resolved fast, and afterward, the cats go right back to lying together as if nothing happened. It's almost as if they treat each other as companions they can both fight and relax with, no problem. Female cats are a whole different animal. Here, a much stronger rivalry tends to come into play, especially when two adult females meet. From what I've seen, female cats tend to hold grudges longer and be less willing to compromise. If one feels threatened, the other has to be ready for that conflict to drag on for quite a while. There's no make up quickly and forget here. A female cat who's been offended can avoid the other one for days. But it's not all about conflict. Female cats also have an incredible capacity to care for others. I've seen adult female cats treat younger kittens almost like their own babies, licking them, watching over them closely, and allowing them things they'd never tolerate from an unfamiliar adult cat. That's where their maternal instinct really shows. Male cats rarely do this, though there are exceptions, cases where a male takes on the role of a calm, protective older brother. 6. Ways of playing. When I watch how a male cat plays versus how a female cat plays, I get the sense I'm looking at two completely different approaches. And even though deep down, both are after the same thing, burning off energy and satisfying the hunting instinct, the way they go about it can be very different. Male cats tend to approach play more physically, almost like brute force. They love mock fights, chases, and shoving matches. More than once, I've watched a male cat leap onto his companion with his full weight, knock him over, and start rolling around on the floor as if they were in an actual battle. That's natural for them. They want to test their strength and show off their skill. Female cats are different. There's a lot more precision and cunning in how they play. They can sit perfectly still, watching, and then suddenly launch into a lightning-fast pounce like true huntresses. Every move seems calculated. They play almost as if they were training for a real hunt, not just for the sheer chaos and fun of it. I've also noticed that male cats tend to play for longer stretches. Even the simplest toy, a piece of string, a little ball of paper, can keep them entertained for long minutes at a time. Female cats tend to get bored faster. They start playing with enormous enthusiasm, but once they decide that's enough, no incentive in the world will change their mind. That same contrast shows up when they play with us. Male cats love physical activity, wrestling with them, chasing them, throwing little balls around. Female cats prefer challenges that engage not just the body, but the mind too. Sometimes I get the feeling they treat me as part of their own hunt, testing my patience and my reactions. And here's something I'm curious about. How do your cats play? And what sex are they? Let me know in the comments. It'd be great to compare experiences and see whether these differences really hold up across the board. Because it's exactly in play that you can best see how different cats can be. The male cat represents strength and endurance. The female cat, intelligence and precision. 7. Health. Another area where differences show up. Thinking about the differences between female and male cats, besides physical build and character, health is the next thing that comes to mind. Even though, deep down, both worlds are pretty similar, some important differences do show up when it comes to their care. To start, male cats tend to have a stronger tendency to roam and wander off, especially if they aren't neutered. Their instinct pushes them to look for females and expand their territory, which translates into higher risk of injuries, illness, and fights with other cats. I once had a male cat who used to come home scratched up, and more than once with serious wounds. That's when I really understood how much neutering can make his life safer. Female cats face a different kind of risk. If they aren't spayed, they can go into heat several times a year. That's not only exhausting for whoever's caring for them, but also very taxing on the female cat herself. On top of that, there's the risk of complications related to pregnancy or birth if she were to get pregnant. That's exactly why it's so often emphasized that spaying isn't just about population control. It's mainly a health matter. There are also differences when it comes to specific illnesses. In male cats, urinary tract problems are fairly common, especially blockages and stones, something directly tied to their anatomy. Female cats have somewhat lower risk in that regard, though of course they can suffer from it too. Meanwhile, in unspayed females, there's more frequent talk of the risk of mammary tumors and hormonal disorders. Comparing the care a female cat needs to that of a male cat, I see that both require the same level of attention and care, just focused on different areas. The male cat needs protection against wandering off and monitoring of his urinary tract. The female cat needs special attention regarding heat cycles, pregnancy, and diseases of the reproductive system. Something essential. Spaying and neutering have a huge impact on a cat's life expectancy. Cats that have had the procedure tend to live longer and healthier lives because the risk of many diseases drops to almost zero. I've seen the difference between cats that were fixed and those that weren't, and I can honestly say it's one of the best decisions you can make for your feline companion's health. To wrap up this point, whether female or male, both need regular vet checkups, a good diet, and consistent attention from their caretaker. Even though there are differences in the details, one thing stays the same. Every cat deserves a healthy, safe life. 8. Myths that need to be busted. Whenever I talk about cats with people, I keep hearing the same ideas that have been repeated for years. They're those half-truths that sound convincing but, in practice, turn out to be pretty exaggerated or flat-out false. I want to take some of them apart because a lot of people believe them wholesale, and in real life with cats, they simply don't hold up. Myth 1. Female cats aren't for people looking for closeness because they're cold and distant. False. A female cat can be just as affectionate and just as attached to her caretaker as any male cat. She just expresses it differently. I've known female cats who slept with me every night, followed me around the house step by step, and reacted to my every move. That's not a lack of closeness, it's simply a different way of showing it. Myth 2. Male cats are aggressive toward people. Also a big exaggeration. It's true that males can get into more conflicts with other cats, especially if they aren't neutered. But toward humans, they generally don't show aggression without cause. Quite the opposite. They tend to be more relaxed and calm. Aggression, when it does show up, is usually the result of poor upbringing, bad past experiences, or some health issue, not the fact of being male. Myth 3. Female cats hunt better than males. It sounds logical because in nature, the maternal instinct really does push females to get food for their young. But in a domestic setting, that difference basically disappears. I've known male cats who were true masters at hunting flies and toys, and female cats who simply had zero interest in that instinct at all. Hunting has more to do with individual character and temperament than with sex. Myth 4. Male cats smell bad and females don't. Another half-truth. An unneutered male can indeed develop a stronger smell as a result of hormones and his need to mark territory. But a neutered male cat is no different from a female cat in that respect. A cat's cleanliness and smell depend much more on care, diet, and overall health than on whether it's male or female. Myth 5. Female cats will always be better caregivers for kittens. Of course, female cats have a maternal instinct, and they're the ones who give birth to and raise the kittens. But there are also male cats who simply take on the job of looking after the kittens, playing with them, and offering support. It's rare, but it happens. So even here, you can't say sex always determines how a cat behaves toward the little ones. Myth 6. All cats are the same. The only thing that matters is character. That's not entirely true either. Sex does influence certain traits and instincts, as we've seen throughout this video. The differences are real, but they're not as rigid as we sometimes want to believe. In practice, every cat ends up breaking some pattern, which is exactly why it's impossible to lock them into simple stereotypes. And to me, that's the most beautiful thing about cats. They always manage to surprise us and slip out of the boxes we try to put them in. All right, we've reached the end, and you're probably expecting a simple answer to the question that titles this video. Who wins in the female cat versus male cat showdown? And here I have an answer that might disappoint you a little. There's no winner. Why? Because every cat is its own little world. I can tell you about general tendencies, that male cats tend to be calmer and more affectionate, and female cats tend to be livelier and more independent. I can tell you about differences in appearance, behavior, health, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to one single thing, the particular character of that specific cat. I've known female cats who were the most affectionate creatures in the world, able to sleep on my lap for hours on end. And I've also known male cats who never tolerated a single pet and always preferred solitude. And vice versa. This shows that sex can give us some hints, but it in no way gives us a 100% guaranteed answer about what our cat is going to be like. For me, the most important thing has always been to give each cat the space to be exactly who it is. Not to expect a female cat to always be a distinguished, aloof lady, or a male cat to be forever a lazy, cuddly plush toy glued to your side. Cats love breaking our expectations and proving to us that they're pure individualists, and that's exactly why we love them so much. So, who wins? Every cat wins, whether female or male. And really, the one who truly wins is you, if you decide to let that furry friend into your life. Because a cat, regardless of its sex, always transforms a home. It brings warmth, funny moments, and sometimes a little bit of chaos too. But that chaos is, without a doubt, the best kind of chaos there is. To finish up, I want to ask you one thing. If you enjoyed this video and want to keep discovering dog and cat trivia with me, subscribe to the channel. Your click really makes a difference. Thanks to it, I know it's worth it to keep making more content, and that this community of animal lovers keeps growing. And trust me, I still have plenty more stories to tell you. Female cat or male cat, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter.